Poke.
So the financial market's the heart of the economy. It's circulating the money where it needs to go. It needs to go to the business firms. That's called financial capital. The business firms are gonna use it to purchase real capital, which are the tools of production. That's how businesses grow and expand. That's how they create jobs. That's how they produce goods and services. And that is called economic growth. All because that's made possible by the financial market. Because of that, it's essential to economic growth. So essential that we could say, show me an economy without a well-functioning financial market, I will show you an impoverished third world economy.
Socialism.
Not because they don't have natural resources, that factor of production, but because they have no access. The businesses, entrepreneurs have no access to the money they need to buy the tools they need to grow their business and create jobs and produce goods and services. So fortunately, we have a good, well-functioning financial market. That money is kind of the lifeblood of the economy. So when we put our money in the bank, again, the bank's gonna lend that. That's called financial capital. Go back to your factors of production. Those businesses can then borrow that money, use that money to buy the tools they need. That's called real capital. Then they're in business. They need to hire people. That's called job growth. They need to produce goods and services. That's called economic growth. The banks, the financial institutions, what altogether we call the financial market is essential to economic growth. So let's break this down. Understand it on a deeper level. Which means households, that's us, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're doing one of two things. We're always doing one of these two things. We could be what an economist calls saving. Here we go again. We have a conversational definition for saving, but that's not necessarily what an economist means with that term. Saving means that's when we deposit money into the bank. All right, so you get your paycheck, you deposit it into the bank. That's called saving.
I thought that's what saving was.
All right, well, this is also saving. Keep reading. Or when we make a payment on a loan. All right, so we make our monthly payment on the car loan, or we make our monthly mortgage payment, or whatever. That's called saving to an economist. Now you might think, well, that's not saving, that's spending. I gotta make my car payment. No, that's saving in this way, because where is the money going? Back into where? Back into the bank, back into the financial market. So on both these examples, when you deposit money, the money goes into the bank. When you make a payment on a loan, the money goes into the bank. Now, what's the bank gonna do with that?
Financial.
Loan it.
They're gonna
Business
loan
firms.
it. What's that money called?
Financial
Financial
capital.
capital. What's the business gonna do with that money?
Make
Real
real
capital. Buy
capital.
real capital. What's that?
Tools of
Tools of
production.
Tools
production.
of production. This is how the economy works. All right, so households are either saving or
Spending.
I knew I'd get somebody to say spending.
Buying.
Nope, just saving.
Just saving.
Set you up
I
for
didn't think that was a
economy.
word.
We're either saving or dis-saving. Now, that's kind of a weird term, but it's not that hard to understand. It's the exact opposite of saving. All right, so when we withdraw money, all right, so it's Friday night, we wanna go to the football game or go to the movies. Theaters even open yet?
Nope.
Yes.
Some of them
Some
are.
of 'em. Go for pizza, whatever. So we go to the ATM, withdraw some cash. We just took money out of the bank or the financial market, and if they don't have it, what can't they do with it?
Loan it.
They can't lend it to business firms as financial capital, can they?
Nope.
cause we just saved it, we withdrew it. Or, when we borrow money from the bank. See, we already established, yes, business firms borrow money from the bank, that's called financial capital. But, so do households, right? Sometimes we go to the lenders, the financial institutions, to get a loan, a car loan, a college loan, a house loan, whatever. And when we borrow money from the bank, that's less money the bank has to lend to the business firms, right? We've already taken it out, that's called dis-saving. So to understand the financial market, understand that as households, as consumers, we're always doing one or the other. We're either saving or dis-saving. We're either putting money back into the bank so they can lend it, or we're pulling money out of the bank, so that's less money they can lend. Time out. It's not just businesses that borrow money from the bank.
It's household.
It's not just households. But we already mentioned yesterday, the government operates at a budget deficit, right? They spend more than they take in taxes. So where do they get the additional money?
Bank.
Bank.
From the financial market. Might not be the same local bank we use, but it's those financial institutions, the financial market, so they can cover their deficit spending.
Fort Knox.
So it's, governments borrow money as well. There's a term for that, that's called crowding out. It's kinda what Aaron does
In
on the basketball court when he's rebounding. Alright, and spreads out his big wings. Alright, takes up as much real estate as he can. Takes away all these square feet so that the rebound comes to him, right?
I like your big wings, Aaron.
Thank you.
Well, that's crowding out kind of in a way. Here's what it means. Business firms are unable, they cannot borrow the money they need. We already know that's called financial capital. Why can't they borrow it? Because it's already been loaned out to the government, so the government could meet their deficit spending. So therefore, every single dollar loaned to the government is one less dollar available for the business firms to borrow as financial capital. Say, well, big deal. Government borrows money. Well, yeah, it is a big deal. For that reason. Remember, the business firms must be able to borrow the financial capital so that they can purchase what?
Real capital.
Real capital, which is what?
Tools of
Tools of
production.
The tools of production, so they can grow the economy, create jobs, produce goods and services. It's called economic growth. Well, the economy cannot grow like it otherwise could if the government is borrowing too much money to cover their deficit. That causes a stagnation of the economy. There's a term for it, it's called crowding out. Because money's finite, right? There's not an endless supply of it. The lenders, the banks, the financial market, they only have a certain amount of money to lend. Well, when the government borrows some of that, that's a smaller pile of money left that that the banks have to lend to those business firms. So the businesses can't grow and expand. Not enough money around. Because the government's spending too much. So yeah, government spending has a negative effect on economic growth. Kind of odd, because the reason the government spends sometimes, like in the COVID relief, the reason the government spends is to stimulate economic growth. Well, it may, in certain areas, in the short term, but because then the banks have less money to lend, in the long term, it's gonna have a negative effect on the economy. Now, Drum roll, ladies and gentlemen. Open your textbooks to page 34. I present to you the circular flow model of the U.S. economy in all its glory right there. All 4 participants. All right, let's break it down, follow along, listen to what I'm saying. All right, let's start from the beginning. We have the business firms and the households. Look at the arrows going to and from those from each other. The business firms, arrow going out, the GDP, gross domestic product. Remember, that's all the goods and services. They're making all the stuff that we use at the households. And in exchange for that, we pay them with consumption expenditures. Well, where did the business firms get the natural resources, the labor, the tools? Yeah, from the households. Those are called the factors of production. And in exchange for the factors of production, they paid us their rent, wages, interest, and profit, the factor costs. That's how we got the money to do the consumption expenditures. But then, of course, there's the government. The money coming in is the taxes, because they're the private sector. They don't produce wealth, they don't make anything. But businesses pay taxes, households pay taxes. Those are the arrows going into the government symbol. And the arrows going out of the government. They make purchases from the business firms, and they make transfer payments to the households. Welfare, whatever. Then we added the bank, or the financial market. All right, the money going out is they make loans. They loan to business firms. They loan to the government. They loan to households, but that's called dissaving, right? And then the money coming back in. All right, business firms make repayments. The government repays their loans. And when the households repay ours, that's called saving. And that's how it all works together. The only new thing on there that we haven't discussed is that funny shaped, bracket-shaped arrow over by the business firm, where it says business investment. See that? All that means is, sometimes when businesses make a profit, they reinvest it into their own business, right? They'll buy some new delivery trucks, or they'll buy a new sign out front, or whatever, right? They just grow their business. They take some of their profit and reinvest it in the business. So that's all that's referring to. So that entire flow model should make sense to you, and that's the U.S. economy. And remember, the whole purpose of a model is to simplify something. So that, in a way, kind of simplifies the U.S. economy. It shows all the participants, how they interact and relate to one another. Any questions?